Hey everyone, I'm Cameron Robertson, CEO of 3PL Systems. I also have Michael Sternberg, our Director of Sales and co-host of 3PL Live Sessions with us today. And today we want to talk about or continue to talk about, based on our last session last Friday with Microsoft, about automation with inside the logistics space. Mike, do you want to kick it off for us?
Yeah, so really, just like Cameron said, continuing off of last week's conversation, I think Microsoft is incredibly resource-rich company. They have an incredibly high level of, let's say, mental horsepower within their employee base over there, and so a lot of what Microsoft is able to do when it comes to AI and ML and other automations in the supply chain space is maybe not as accessible to most companies or most people listening here. And so really what we wanted to dive into today was this concept of an automation audit, which is actually a term that Cameron brought up to me a few years, 3, 4, maybe 5 years ago now. And utilizing this automation audit as almost like an organizational health check, and knowing and finding out where you can and cannot implement different automations. So Cameron, since again, you're the first person I ever heard use this term, can you kind of define what your idea of an automation audit is?
Yeah, absolutely. So an automation audit, at least to me, within inside of your tech stack, is really identifying all of the tasks that your team performs today. Really understand what are they doing for you in your operations. So a well-defined chart of your operations team. And what you're looking to identify is what can actually be automated. Automation could be something that you do internally. It could be something that you do externally with a third-party provider. It could be something that you look at Microsoft for. You can even look at open source platforms that help you with a lot of automation within your organization. But the goal, to kind of give you some insight on what we do within our organization, is to create a data sheet that actually tells you how automated is your operation versus how manual is your operation. And so we've created a platform that is called Staff Efficiency, which will actually dictate to the end user how automated is your system. And so, again, the goal of that entire process is to truly understand where can you improve on your automation with inside of your organization.
Sweet. So I want to kind of pick that apart a little bit more and actually dive deeper, just so the people listening can have a better understanding. The staff efficiency report that Cam is referring to effectively will compare manual touches, automated touches, and overlapping touches, right? And so that can be anything from load creation, carrier selection, tracking, invoicing, all of these different pieces of moving a load through the system. We have a report which will show you user did this, technology did this, or it overlapped here. And then the variance between those can allow you to audit that. And so I remember when you and the dev team introduced that report, Cam, I remember the first time looking at it, and it was like, this makes a hell of a lot of sense. And I think what's important, though, to kind of note on a different piece of this is just looking at the data isn't enough. And what I mean by that is you have to make sure that you have enough density of either volume from a customer or enough density and capacity from carriers and or a single carrier on a lane to even make sense of automating something. So what do I mean by that? If I have a customer that sends me one load a day, one load a week, sure, I can automate it. I could set up an EDI 204. I could set up an API connection. I could do all these things, but it doesn't really matter. And on the flip side, if I don't have, let's say with LTL, a contracted rate to select a carrier and give a quote, or if I don't have enough density of truckload carriers that I can get a spot quote from, then it doesn't really matter. So there is a certain density of data and volume that you need to make these automations worthwhile. Can you speak a little bit more to that, Cam, on like the technical side in terms of like, if you don't have X amount of volume and or density, then the automation is kind of useless. Am I saying that the right way?
Yeah, definitely. So let's talk about from the customer aspect. One of the things is that automation is not typically cheap to deploy when we're talking about automation, right? Especially if you're the one building it. AI and ML, we see that as kind of I view it as a buzzword in our industry. more so than reality for a lot of companies that are deploying AI and ML, because a lot of it falls into what's called RPA, which is robotic processing automation. So it's not true AI and ML. But what you're referring to in regards to density, one, you want to make sure that if you're deploying automation, say with a new customer, that it's going to be a customer that you're going to have continuously within your organization. There are tools that we've built, such as like ShipMine, for example, which can be deployed at a global level for all of your customers and automate like your entire LTL lifecycle. But where it excels is with those customers that are continuously going to be coming back to you and shipping with you, where the system is going to automatically take into consideration historicals and things of that nature, based on your tariffs that you have, and select those rates on that shipment without the user actually having to do anything. So picture a world where your customers integrated their ERP platform into your TMS, and there's other TMSs in the industry that do something similar. But imagine an ERP integrate with your TMS. Your customer inserts their shipment into their ERP. That automatically is sent to your TMS, and then you never need to touch the actual load. And that is what, when we talk about full LTL lifecycle automation, that's what I'm referring to. So the shipment will come into the application, it's in book status, and it will automatically be rated. A carrier will be selected, automatically be dispatched to the carrier, track and trace, all the way through to delivered. Invoice will be created, and partners like Triumph Pay and Triumph Audit can automatically help audit those invoices for the carriers. And at the end of the day, all you as a brokerage are looking at is the exceptions, instead of doing all the mundane work of trying to dispatch a load or track a load. That in today's day and age, you shouldn't have to do any of that. And if you are doing that with inside of any TMS that you're on, you should really reach out to your TMS provider and ask them, hey, how can I take this task that I am manually doing right now, and how can I automate it within your platform? And a lot of us TMS providers, we do partner with a lot of great platforms in the industry, and some of those like Cargo Chief or Parade, or there's tons out there that we integrate with. But that's what I'm referring to. So when we're talking about automation, I'm talking about life cycles. I'm talking about accounting. I'm talking about general operations, getting shipments into your platform. Even EDI is a form of automation. Even though it's a dated technology, it still works. It still gets the job done. It still passes data between systems without a user having to get involved. So,
yeah, just listening to you talk about it from the technical side, and trying to put it in the layman's terms so that my brain can understand it. And we have these conversations all the time, but it's really as simple as like, is it a well-defined, repeatable process? And if the answer is yes, then you can probably automate it, right? And so I think what we might want to do, Cam, is maybe like pick apart each piece of load's life cycle, and just because it's relevant to what we do, and kind of walk through how we might be able to automate that. So you talked a little bit already about like grabbing loads from a customer, like load tenders through EDI 204s, or integrating with their ERPs and their WMSs. And I think most people are pretty familiar with that kind of stuff, and understanding that data exists in one system and it can be sent via EDI or API to another system, in our case a TMS, so that load entry doesn't have to happen. The second piece of that, though, which is the quoting piece, I think the LTL stuff is a little more obvious, a little easier, because it's all contracted rates, and you can go on a website and plug in like you're looking for a flight, right? Point A to point B, and X pallets at X weight and these dimensions, and it'll just give you a price. And LTL rating engines are a dime a dozen. However, what we're seeing a lot of cool stuff around is truckload rating. In these like auto quoting platforms, you got Bitfreighter's got a tool, you've got Tabby Connect's got a tool. I know AVRL is doing some really cool stuff with it. And even TMS is directly taking in things like green screens data or DAT rate view data, or any of these rate indexes, and applying markup tools that we already have that exist in our environment. In theory, if used correctly, your customers can go grab a truckload rate in live time based on a stream of either your data or market data with your specific markup on it. And then obviously it's just up to you as a broker on the back end to go find the capacity and cover it at a price where you're not going to lose your ass. But that's an automation, right? Your customer doesn't have to reach out to you to get a price. And talk to a prospect recently who's now a customer. You know who I'm talking about, Cam, where they said, look, I don't want to talk to the customers or the shippers anymore because I don't have to. And I think that's the piece. It's like, if you don't have to do the well-defined, repeatable process and a machine can do it for you, then let it, right? And so can you talk a little bit about the next piece of that, not the quoting the customer, but the carrier selection and the carrier sourcing part and things that exist to automate that piece of it, maybe some waterfall tendering, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So all those things that you just listed are all forms of automation. So one of the ways to proceed with automation around truckload is integrating with some of the platforms that you mentioned, like a Green Screens, like a Parade, like a Trucker Tools, whatever it may be, to help generate the price from the marketplace. Once those tools are integrated into a TMS, and if they're well integrated, you can actually utilize that data to perform the same tasks that the end user is doing for you today on your sales team, your carrier sales team, your operations team, depending on how you run your brokerages. But you can automate all that. So all that work where they're going out, they're posting to a load board, where they're trying to find coverage, they're trying to get bids from the carrier. If that's a manual process for you today, I would highly recommend looking into, hey, how do I actually automate this so that my salespeople are more focused on generating new revenue, where if I already have the data to perform this task that the sales rep is doing, I shouldn't have to have the sales rep go click buttons inside of an application. In reality, that's what technology is for, is to help eliminate a lot of those manual, mundane tasks that you do day in, day out. And so that's just one example, is that you can automate that entire process. Once a shipment's in the system, especially for truckload, and you need to cover it, all of those steps in between, not every single load can be done this way, but a lot of loads, all those steps in between can be automated, where it's automatically posting to load boards or resetting itself to be posted to a load board, or finding coverage at, a max min buy rate that you have set in your system, so that you can make sure that you're not losing your asses when you're actually covering a load. So you can make sure you're making a profit, you're making margin. And it's gotten to a point where you can actually do this with some TMSs in live time directly through an LCR. And it's actually going to look at market data to tell you what is the estimated buy cost for you as a freight brokerage, and what is your sell cost going to be if you want to make a 10% markup or 20% markup without having to manually use a calculator to figure it out, where the system just does all that work for you. So that's just one example from a truckload side, is, again, just automating all that work in between to actually cover a load. Yeah.
No, again, I want to kind of go back to a point that I made earlier in the conversation, is so much of it is dependent on density of data, especially when it comes to truckload coverage and sourcing carriers, right? It's, as we all know, unless you have a contract rate, you're out on the spot market and your price is going to fluctuate. You better have enough carriers in the lane you're trying to cover, or your automation or your algorithms aren't going to work, right? You're not going to have enough data or enough participants in this bid to be able to, get the price that you expect or find the coverage that you expect. And so, again, finding that density of data in both the customer, shipper, and the carrier side is important. I think an easy one, and just to kind of keep going through the life cycle of a shipment, easy one that most people are fairly aware of is obviously tracking. But I think what a lot of people don't think about it, they think about tracking from either one or the other side, meaning they only think about, do I get tracking from a carrier, or do I provide tracking back to a customer? When at the real enterprise level, you need to do both, right? So you need to be able to synthesize data and aggregate data from multiple sources, and then provide them in a singular platform for your enterprise shippers. So if I'm a broker, let's say with a large managed services customer, I might be getting tracking data from ELDs directly. I might be getting it from Trucker Tools. I might be getting it from MacroPoint. I might be getting it from LTL carriers from EDI 214s. I might be getting tracking data from 5-6 different sources, right? And then my job, or my TMS's job as a freight broker, is to aggregate this data, put it into a singular interface, and then get it back to my shipper, right? And so automating all of these data flows, maybe 5 or 6 inputs into a singular output to your customer, then again, you don't have somebody making check calls. You don't have somebody scrubbing data. You don't have somebody on your side just, again, doing a well-defined, repeatable task, because you have all these different machines and tools that can do that. And the cool thing is that in 2024, most people have APIs and their tools can talk to each other, and everything can, the name of the game is interoperability, right? And with the TMS as kind of the cornerstone or the foundational piece of most people's operations, being able to ingest and output these data files and these data points to be able to give everybody what they need is a really almost, I know people hate this word, it's table stakes almost at this point, right? It really is, though. It's like you're not even in the conversation. Like, how many people we talk to, they're like, hey, can you integrate with so and so, whoever it is? And thankful to our team, I get to say yes when I have those conversations. I'm like, yeah, we integrate with them. Because there's just so many people that specialize in so many cool things, and they're all trying to automate mundane processes, and the tracking being one of them. So, Cam, you've got a lot of experience around the invoicing piece and building EDI 210s and managing that whole process, and looking at the factoring integrations and the Triumph integrations. Can you illuminate some of what tools we have on the backside of the back office stuff to automate invoicing and payables?
Yeah, so there's a few different things. First off, one thing I do want to say about just invoicing in general, especially AP and AR, both sides, not just one or the other. If you're not using some form of automation today, you're falling behind in a massive way. Because what we're seeing, especially from the brokerages that are very successful, even in our environment, in our application, they're automating a majority of these tasks. And the way they're doing it is utilizing built-in tools that we have, also through EDI 210 coming in from carriers, or they're deploying technologies like Triumph Pay and Triumph Pay Audit, which is an incredible platform, especially for the payable side, where Triumph pretty much does all the work for you. And that data leaves our application, goes into Triumph. Triumph does the work, and it comes right back, and it automates, creating the payable directly in the interface. So, those two examples, just Triumph Pay Audit, EDI, those are just some of the efficiencies that you can deploy today directly in the interface. And one of the things that I hear a lot in our industry when we're talking about automation deployment and these technologies is, oh man, it's going to cost X amount of dollars to deploy automation. I'm going to throw a body at it instead. I would highly recommend taking the time or hiring a third party to come in and to audit your organization and do a cost value analysis inside of your actual org on, if I were theoretically to move forward with this integration that is going to cost X amount of dollars, what is that going to do for me? Is it going to allow me to take this full-time employee and put them somewhere else within the organization to generate more revenue in the long term for us than leaving them on a task that can be fully automated just by paying for a platform? And so I do feel that a lot of the time when I am speaking to certain brokerages, whether they're clients or even outside of our platform, they're going to be looking at what is the cost to automate, right? And what are those third parties? And what I'd be wary of if you have a provider coming to you and say, hey, no, we do it all in-house. We automate everything in-house. At some point, that becomes too vast to manage. That's the reality, is that if they're trying to perform everything themselves and they're not looking at partners that are best in class to manage their integrations or to help them build and make them more efficient as a TMS or any type of platform, ERP, CMS, whatever it may be, long term, that's not going to work out because you just have such a vast application that you can't manage every single aspect of it and keep up with the industry trends. So looking at partners and definitely doing cost value analysis on what is the impact going to be in deploying these automations, especially with invoicing. Again, it should be almost fully automated in this day and age, is definitely important.
So I'm going to ask you a question. I want your technical perspective, because it's going to be different than mine always, right? Because
Yeah.
I sell software, I don't build software, right? So if I am a non-technical founder, or it doesn't have to be in freight brokerage, in any space, if I am a business unit leader or owner, who can help me? Like how do I, okay, I don't know what the hell automation is. I don't know what an EDI or an API is. All these terms sound like a foreign language. Who do I reach out to? Like, how do I get help with this kind of stuff? I know you personally. I have a Cameron, right? What do people do that don't have a Cameron, right? Like, seriously, what are you supposed to do if you don't have a technical person in your circle?
Yeah, so I'm gonna challenge that, where I actually do believe everyone has a technical person within their circle, especially in today's day and age. But
You would
if
hope.
if you do not, I would highly recommend connecting with contract-based employees, reaching out to other fractional CTOs, CIOs, reaching out to people even through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is a powerful tool. You can connect with anyone that has any type of knowledge just at a click of a button. And if you're reaching out for help, people naturally like helping other people. So it's actually quite simple to reach out to people that can actually make you more efficient, to fill that gap that you might be missing on the knowledge side. The one thing that sometimes I see is that brokerages view technology as just this, hey, that's the technology side, that's not that important to me, that just exists.
Right.
Well, I hate to challenge that too, but the reality is the future of everything is going to be highly focused on technology. Technology is more important than ever before. So if I were to step out of being in a technology company and step into starting a freight brokerage, I would put technology at the forefront of that organization, along with recognizing that I'm starting a sales organization. But how can I utilize technology as I start it side by side with my sales team in order to boost our impact within this vertical? So technology is, again, I'm going to keep saying it, more important than ever before. Make sure you have the right people in your circle. If you don't have the right people in your circle, start connecting with technologists. Start to get to know technologists. Go to these industry events, TIA, Manifest, any of these industry events have tons of technologists there who can lead you to friends they might know. But if you're at a certain size as a freight brokerage and you don't have a CIO or CTO inside of your organization, and I would say anything above $30 million, if you do not have a full-time CIO, CTO, I would highly recommend looking at it, because the freight brokerages that I see being the most successful have those roles filled. And their efficiency is being directly driven by the technologists deploying technology within their organizations, where it's the businessman will focus on the business side, growth, sales, revenue, those things, but let the technologists do what they're really good at. So that's what I would recommend. If you're not looking at it, you should start looking at it.
Yeah, I want to highlight a piece of what you just said, just so that people don't get it twisted, because you and I have these conversations all the time. Cameron recognizes, and I recognize, the human element of all business and freight brokerages today. We are in no belief that the technology will replace the humans today. It may happen 10, 15, 20, 30. I don't know. I don't know how long, right? We're not there. So it's like, that's all, future, whatever predictions. However, human plus technology, it's not a 1 + 1 = 2. It's like a 1 + 1 = 5 if you do it the right way, right? Like, the math there compounds in a way that, like, you get a bigger output, right? And so, yes, the technology is not a replacement for the human. And I know you weren't saying that, Cameron. I just want to make sure that the listeners are understanding. But we do really believe, when you empower humans with tools, again, it's not a 1 + 1, human plus technology = 2. It's a 1 + 1 = 5. And so automating the stuff that really a human doesn't need to be doing, allowing a human to use the mind in a way that a tool can't, which today is like creativity and like human emotion, and there's things that machines and technology cannot replicate today. But giving humans the bandwidth and the time to be able to activate those parts of their brains and bring that value forth in an organization is where we see within even our client base or the rest of the industry the most success, right? And so by no means, even though we are a software company, do we subscribe to the machines are taking over, robots are coming for your jobs type of thing. But you sure as hell are better off with it than without it. And that's for damn sure. Cam, you want to end on that, man, and just talk about what we're doing next week?
Yeah, absolutely. So next week, we are going to be having Anderson Camp from Relia Fuel joining us to talk a little bit about his company and what they specialize in. Outside of that, I want to thank Michael for joining us, and thank all of you for joining us today. And we will talk next week.
Thanks, everyone.